your baby. Come, this way. Can I have a cuddle? I guess during COVID we've been locked up like everyone else in Australia, and it's been nice to show them that there is a world out there rather than just being, you know, in our four walls of our own home.
Where does that go?
After years of COVID disruptions, nurse Megan de Cruz was looking forward to introducing her young family to relatives in New Zealand.
Hey, well done.
She booked flights with Qantas back in August. The price was $3,000 for return flights from Sydney to Auckland in early January.
We saved to be able to go. We were willing to pay that little bit extra. What do you want?
Despite receiving confirmation of the booking on her phone, the fare was never deducted from her credit card. 2 months later, in October, she was told the booking was cancelled.
We haven't had any communication on their end. It's been us calling them and trying to find out what's going on.
Qantas suggested the family rebook the same flight, but by then the cost had more than doubled to around $8,000.
Okay. The prices are just extraordinary. Like, they're just going up and up and up.
Travellers are paying the highest airfares recorded in decades. New data from the Competition and Consumer Commission shows in November the cheapest economy return fares on over 10 routes were more than double what they were back in 2019 before the pandemic. The cost of a return flight from Melbourne to Perth increased by 146% to more than $1,000. Adelaide to the Gold Coast has jumped to nearly $1,000 return. And the cost of a round trip from Uluru to Sydney more than tripled.
Attention, arriving passengers.
I'm flying to Melbourne.
What are you paying?
$600, and I've had to pay another $30 for luggage. It's ridiculous. I mean, you know, they seem to be just charging whatever they want nowadays.
I remember in the days, Melbourne, you could almost go to Melbourne, return Adelaide on the cheap flights, you know, $70, $80 tickets. And now they're about $1,200 return.
More than a year after COVID travel restrictions were lifted, airlines are offering fewer flights than they did before the pandemic. Qantas concedes that's contributing to packed flights and increased demand, but says it needs to keep aircraft in reserve to deal with delays.
Should you pay that much for a lettuce when there aren't many of them? I mean, it is very much about supply and demand. Qantas has some 70% of the market, so basically it can do whatever it wants.
Qantas says Australia isn't the only country experiencing high prices for plane tickets at the moment, as the war in Ukraine impacts global oil prices.
In Qantas's case, our fuel bill will be up $1 billion compared to what it was pre-COVID.
Qantas received over $2 billion in taxpayer money during the pandemic. You've lifted your profit forecast for the December half by $150 million. Why are your customers bearing the brunt of high fares?
The support that Qantas received over the pandemic, a large proportion of that went directly to our people who were not working. So it's not as if Qantas was enriched by the money that it got from the government. We, in fact, our revenue was $25 billion less through COVID as a result of the lockdowns and everything that was happening. We borrowed money, we mortgaged aircraft, we sold land, and we raised money from shareholders just to get through. Now what we're seeing in the recovery, and it's good that we're recovering strongly, because it means if we're profitable, we can reinvest, and that's what's happening.
Things have certainly improved, particularly over the last few months. What we've seen is a lot more staff employed in the baggage handling areas. We've seen more staff employed at the airports to service the passengers that are coming through.
Tony Lucas is the president of the Australian and International Pilots Association and flies for Qantas. He says although things are improving operationally, the higher fares aren't sustainable into the future.
What's driving it though is a lack of capacity and not enough aeroplanes and not enough seats between the various cities at the moment. Qantas is keeping some aircraft in reserve to make up for any significant disruptions they have, but that means that those aircraft are not currently flying around. They're sitting on the ground waiting to be needed.
Aviation's still recovering from COVID. There are structural issues that we have around sick leave, around supply chain. That means we need more resilience, and the way we get that is by reducing capacity.
The ACCC says it will be monitoring airlines and that it would be concerned if the airlines withheld capacity in order to keep airfares high. Aviation analyst Peter Harbison expects fares to come down as that airline capacity gets back to pre-COVID levels.
These are not fares that are sustainable in the long run. And we're already hearing a lot of people this Christmas talking about going by train or going by car, whereas previously they would have flown.
Virgin told 7:30 it expects capacity will be around 100% of pre-COVID levels in December and January.
Flying is the only way for us to see our family, and it's very important for us to still travel.
After 7:30 contacted Qantas about the De Cruz's flights to New Zealand, they're now booked on a flight for the same price they would have paid back in August.
They apologised for the inconvenience. You know, this is a really good outcome that we'll be able now to go home and visit family and not worry and stress leading up to Christmas.
It's probably going to be, in a lot of ways, another 6 months or so before we really do emerge into a new environment which is going to be relatively stable.